Welcome to the Carriker Chronicles, the People Show. Checking the pulse of Husker Nation, brought to you by DPS Concrete Construction. Check them out at dpsconstruction.net, also carrikerchronicles.com. Ladies and gentlemen, it's just science. It's where all your Husker sports hopes and dreams will come true. And real quick, before you start either loving or hating on the shirt, just let me have my day. Nebraska's going to a bowl game. All the curses that go back to like 2016, 12, and 0 frickin' 4 are in the past. Just let me have my day. Okay, we can have off-season discussions of Kool-Aid and Roulade, all that down the road. Just let me have my day. Big corn energy, all right? Multiple types of big energy rolling on this show. Here we go. Realistically, there is a realistic world where Nebraska could be 7-5 with a top 15 recruiting class going to a bowl game. We already know we're going to a bowl game, and Dana Holgorsen is our offensive coordinator as well. I didn't even put that in the title of the show. That's a realistic world that does exist. I said this before the Wisconsin game, and people looked at me like I was crazy. They weren't wrong, but I sound a little less crazy now. Worst case scenario, 6-6, top 20 recruiting class. We have the number 19 class in the country right now, and we already know we're going to a bowl game. That's worst case scenario. If you're completely cool with either one of those scenarios, smash that like button. Ladies and gentlemen, all right, if you missed my show last night on Sunday night, I broke down the 4 major things that Dana Holgorsen has done to turn Nebraska's offense around so vastly and so quickly. Also, Garfield made a recent appearance on my show, and tomorrow I'll be putting out my Iowa preview and prediction show with 5 special guests. All right, the last 10 minutes of the show, I'm going to bring on renowned orthosurgeon Dr. Strasburger, and I got a ton of questions for him, so stay tuned for that at the end of the show. Nebraska could be 7-5, but the question is, which Nebraska teams are going to show up this Friday? Is Dana Holgorsen's offense going to play like it did versus Wisconsin again this Friday on Black Friday versus Iowa? It's not just a Nebraska thing. Look at Alabama. All right, they were up 30-7 on Georgia at halftime, and then got outscored 27-11 in the second half. This same team went into Death Valley on a Saturday night and stomped a mud hole on LSU 42-13. That same team lost to Vanderbilt and got a mud hole stomped in them by 6-5, Oklahoma 24-3 last Saturday. Ole Miss beats Georgia 28-10. That same Ole Miss team lost to a 4-7 Kentucky team and a 6-5 Florida team, probably the best 6-5 team I've seen in quite a few years, to be honest with you, with all due respect. It's a college football thing. These are young men. You don't know who's going to show up day in and day out, week in and week out. Which Husker team shows up on Friday? Because we're as volatile a team as there is in the country. Those are the 2 most extreme examples I could think of, along with Nebraska in America. Will Dana Holgorsen's offense play the same versus Iowa? Now, Huskers open up as a 4.5-point underdog. Iowa's still playing a third-string quarterback who I believe is a walk-on. I'll do all my final recon for Iowa and that show for tomorrow, but he's a third-string quarterback. I believe he's a walk-on, only thrown 20 passes in his entire college football career, a transfer from Colorado State. Hasn't even passed for a total of 100 yards in his CFB career so far, and it would only be his second start of his career as well. Now, Iowa has a great defense. They have a star running back. They're going to Iowa. Iowa's going to Iowa. That's okay with me because we stopped the ground game pretty good. Not so much versus the air, so maybe it's a good matchup for us. But again, my full preview and prediction will go out tomorrow. So there is a realistic chance that we could be 7-5. I'll let you know my final thoughts on that tomorrow. Top 15 recruiting class, question mark. That's what I have written here. We're currently number 19 in the country when it comes to recruiting, number 5 in the Big Ten, depending on which recruiting service you look at. 4 of the top 5 players in the state of Nebraska are currently committed to the Huskers. All right, the number 2 player, Chase Lofton, 6'6" tight end out of Omaha, is committed to Florida State. They're not doing so hot. He's kind of been wavering. You never know if he might flip or not. I've heard rumors, but we'll see. I've heard rumors that he wants to get out of state, and that's okay. Come join the good guys, though. We currently have 7 4-star players committed to the Huskers 2025 recruiting class, and there's a couple more coming. I don't know the exact stars because I don't know the exact players, but Dawson Merritt told me that there's possibly more, but he knows of 2, and I quote, huge gets that are still coming. Now, I don't know exactly what that means, and I didn't want to pry too much, but there's a possibility when this thing's all said and done, Nebraska could have more 4-star players in this 2025 recruiting class than they've ever had. It just depends on how it all shakes out. Some of the guys who are speculated to be on this potential commit/flip list for Nebraska, and there's more than this, but I don't want to get too crazy into the rumor mill, but 5-star athlete wide receiver Michael Terry, who's been rumored to commit to Texas forever. Why hasn't he done it? Safety 4-star Cal commit, number 1 player in Hawaii, Aiden Manitai. I know he's definitely liking what he's seeing from the Huskers. And 4-star wide receiver Oklahoma commit Cortez Mills. A couple of potential flips, 4 guys to keep your eye on. All right, some JUCO offensive linemen and some other rumors as well. Again, I don't want to get too crazy into all of this, but a top 15 recruiting class is definitely something that could happen for Matt Rule and the Huskers. If Dana Holgorsen is on staff full-time going forward, do you think that's a hard sell to some of those athletes and wide receivers? No, it is not. The bowl game picture. I talked about this a little bit on Sunday, and I just want to be clear. We're going to a bowl game. I'm happy. If we're 6-6, which is worst case scenario, going to any bowl game, which is worst case scenario, and a top 20 recruiting class, worst case scenario, I'm cool with all that. I don't care if we go to the I had to look it up. Game Above Sports Bowl in Detroit the day after Christmas, December 26th, and playing a MAC team. It's about the worst bowl game I can think of. We could go there. I'd be cool with that. I don't care for this year. I'm going to change my thoughts on that next year. But for this year, I'm totally cool with that. Even if we go to the Pinstripe Bowl, Yankee Stadium versus an ACC team, don't care. I'd be cool with all that. Now, if we beat Iowa, though, and get to 7-5, there's likely going to be 4 Big Ten teams that get into the college football playoff picture, into the playoff itself. Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana. We'd be 7-5. Illinois has already got 8 wins. They're going to be ahead of us in the bowl selection process. But it depends on how a lot of these other games shake out. But all of a sudden, a New Year's type bowl game becomes somewhat realistic for the Huskers. A Citrus Bowl, a ReliaQuest Bowl in Tampa, the old Outback Bowl. They're actually played on December 31st this year because 3 of the 4 college football playoff games are played on January 1st. The 4th is played New Year's Eve. But they become a lot more possible. Nebraska would, in this scenario, if we beat Iowa, 7-5, would have the tiebreaker over Iowa, over Rutgers. Now the question is, the teams we're competing with, USC, Washington, Michigan, Minnesota, all potential 7-win teams. They all have 6 wins right now. USC's an underdog versus Notre Dame. All right. Washington's an underdog versus Oregon. Michigan's an underdog versus Ohio State. All right. We're an underdog versus Iowa. Minnesota, 6-6, a 2-point underdog at Wisconsin, which surprised me, but it's senior day. Wisconsin's made a bowl game every year since 2001. They got 28 seniors on that roster, so who knows how all this could shake out. But if we beat Iowa, there's a chance we could be in that conversation for a New Year's Day type bowl game. The family and I are going to the bowl game. I'm rooting for a warm weather site, but again, I don't care. I'm going to walk around with big core energy all day, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see what happens. But right now, we're projected to go to either the Music City Bowl, play LSU or Ole Miss, the Rate Bowl in Phoenix, play Texas Tech, or the Pinstripe Bowl in Yankee Stadium versus Georgia Tech or Pittsburgh. It's wide open. I do want to say this. Pay Dana Holgorsen whatever it takes to keep him here. Pay him whatever. Imagine how differently certain games this year could have gone had he been here the whole time. I do want to, before I bring Dr. Strasburger on, I do want to set up this clip. I recorded it Saturday night, late Saturday night. In fact, USC and UCLA had just started. That game was going to end at like 3 in the morning, it felt like. And Auburn and A&M had just gone into overtime. But every week on TikTok, I do a college football playoff scoreboard recap show. It's like 3 minutes. But I'm going to play that for you. I was half delirious. Hopefully you find it entertaining. But since I didn't know it at the time, I'll just let you know. USC beat UCLA to become bowl eligible 19-13, the Battle of LA. And Auburn upset Texas A&M 43-41 on a dropped 2-point conversion attempt on a trick play by A&M. But before I play that clip and bring on Dr. Strasburger, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, DPS Concrete Construction. I say it every day. They're your local concrete experts. There's nobody better. Concrete work, retaining wall work. They are the folks for you, ladies and gentlemen. Bring them in to get the job done. DPSconstruction.net. Also, Allen Capital Group. Check them out at allencapgroup.com. That's ALLENCAP group.com. They take care of my family's finances. They have next level solutions for next level needs. Offices in Omaha, Grand Island, and Ogallala. Roll that TikTok clip. Ladies and gentlemen, here's your weekly scoreboard college football recap. Well, USC and UCLA are tied 3-3. That game's going to go until about 5 in the morning, so I'll get back to you later on that one. Although Texas A&M and Auburn, what the blue hell? Auburn, A&M tied going into overtime. A&M, wake the heck up. Texas going to spank you like a 4-year-old in Kmart next week. Actually not. That's going to be an insane home atmosphere. I got the Aggies with the upset, despite what may or may not happen tonight in overtime. Ohio State says, hey, Indiana, we're the big boys. You're the little brother. Ain't nothing changed. In fact, in the second quarter, actually, it was a good game going into halftime, 14-7. But in the second quarter, Indiana had the ball for 8.5 minutes, yet 0 yards of total offense. Indiana ends up losing 38-15 to the Ohio State Buckeyes. Notre Dame, they're not very nice to our service academy schools. All right, they spank Army, with all due respect, 49-14. Let's see what else we got here. Oklahoma, holy Moses Malone. They stomp a mud hole in their school with the number on the side of their helmet for some dumb reason, also known as Alabama, 24-3. Jalen Milroe was benched at one point in this game. I've never seen Oklahoma lose to Alabama. And every time they play in my lifetime, they're an underdog, yet Oklahoma always wins, going all the way back to the Sugar Bowl like a decade ago when Bob Stoops was talking trash about the SEC, which Oklahoma's now in. And then they spanked Alabama, who was a big-time favorite in the Sugar Bowl that year. Florida, the most dangerous team in the country, beat the team that I call the other most dangerous team in the country. Ole Miss upsets them 24-17 to get bowl eligible. SMU, one loss on the season. I'm only mentioning them because they have one loss on the season. They whooped up on Virginia 33-7. Georgia, why'd you play UMass? Well, I'm not even going to talk about that. Arizona State beats BYU. Arizona State ran backwards their last 3 plays, then chucked the ball in the air. Time didn't run out. 4th down. Nope, still time on the clock. It's now BYU's ball. They catch. They throw the Hail Mary. They catch it. But they get tackled at the 3 and lose. Kansas upsets Colorado. What is going on? And now Arizona State, who was predicted to be dead last in the Big 12 before the start of the season, now controls their own destiny going to the Big 12 championship game if they win their last game of the season. Kansas whoops up on them Sanders boys, 37-21. Oklahoma, 25 straight seasons of being bowl eligible, the second longest streak in America, right behind Georgia. Alabama hadn't been held without a touchdown since 2011 when they played LSU, lost 9-6 at home. Then for some reason got to play them again in the national championship game in the Sugar Bowl and then won that game. But they had not been held to 3 points since 2004 versus South Carolina. Ladies and gentlemen, and Nebraska mollywopped Wisconsin, but I already talked about that a million times. This has been your college football scoreboard recap. Have a great day. Or night, because it's kind of late. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm joined by renowned orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Strasburger of Syracuse Area Health and Strasburger Orthopedics. Check them out online, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Scott, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, doing very well, Adam. Great weekend for the Huskers.
Oh, my gosh, absolutely phenomenal. Phenomenal weekend.
Went to 3 Husker events and had 3 really good victories.
Not too shabby of a weekend, huh?
Oh, yeah. Not bad at all.
All right, so unfortunately, when I bring you on, it's not always the most exciting conversation because I like to learn about rehab, prehab, what can we expect from people, what's it like? Like, I'm actually going to start with something that's blasphemous for a Nebraska show. I'm going to start with the Colorado player. Talk to me about Travis Hunter. The guy averages 122 snaps a game. How is that possible? How does he take care of his body, and how long can he do something like this?
Well, you have to have a support staff that he has. What he's doing, every once in a while there's generational talent. He's without question generational talent, if not even more unique than that. He has an amazing support staff. He takes care of his body, takes care of his mind. He's using a lot of different techniques that are out there. He's using, occasional hyperbaric oxygen. He's using all kinds of recovery modalities, and he just takes care of himself 24/7, 365, and it allows him to do what he can do.
I've heard that recovery is something he does all the time, cryotherapy, stuff like that. All right, let's talk about a current Husker who's going to be done for the regular season. Matt Rule already let us know that. Maybe he'll be back in time for the bowl game. But you look at a guy like Tommy Hill, and I believe it's been his plantar fasciitis he's been dealing with all year. And Coach Rule said he's only been able to go like 50%, 75% at times. How challenging can it be to come back from something like that? And if you're trying to play through it, how even realistic is that?
Well, you can see Tommy's tried to play through it. You can see a couple times where he's just planted that foot and there's been nothing there. He's a phenomenal talent. He's one of the best there is at his position. And he unfortunately just has a chronic nagging issue. The plantar fascia is a band of tissue that's used to support the bottom of the foot. It's a very common issue in runners, but we see it in any athlete. It's usually athletes as they get older, but you can see it in young athletes. Sometimes they're made a little bit differently. Their foot sometimes has a little bit higher arch and makes them a little bit more susceptible to issues like this. But he's had some issues with it. He's had a little bit of tearing in it, and it is a hard thing to recover from. It needs time, and in the middle of the season, as you know, there is no time. So he tries to back and play on it, and it's gotten a little bit worse than better. And there are ways to treat this, but if you consider some surgical or other treatment options, you're looking at him sitting out for after 12 weeks or so. So it's been an unfortunate situation for him. He's a phenomenal talent. He'll get this better during the off season, but it's just a hard problem to fix and normalize during the season.
So Dylan Raiola looks healthy now, looks good now, but obviously a couple of weeks ago versus UCLA took a big hit. His back was bothering him. I know he didn't practice much during the bye week the following week. Obviously versus USC, came out and started. He looks healthy now. But man, when my back blocks up, I can't even stand up or sit down. What's it like trying to do what he did, which is come back from a back injury like that and play with it? And the back seems to be a unique thing to me because it can just lock up on you. You can't even freaking move.
Yeah, in football players, especially in former football players, we all, have had that incidents where our back locks up on us. We're laying on the floor and people are like, "Are you okay?" And you're like, "I can't move. No, I'm not
Yep.
okay." In Dylan's case, he had more of a significant contusion event than anything else. And, that can recover just like any bruise can. With us, with former athletes, as we age, a lot of the supporting structures, the bone, the disc, the ligaments involved start to age and deteriorate. We hear about disc herniations and disc disease, where the disc loses some of its hydration. I kind of liken it to a sponge. When a sponge is nice and wet, it's soft, and you wouldn't mind jumping on top of a sponge. But at the age, we lose that hydration in that disc, and it becomes more susceptible to getting little tears in it. It becomes more firm and less forgiving. And we'll get these normal aging phenomena in our lower back, and when that happens, sometimes it makes it near impossible to move. Obviously, Dylan is a lot younger than you and I, and has a lot more recovery ability. And in his particular case, this was more of a contact injury than a chronic overuse type injury that older athletes get as we age.
So here's something in general college football that I don't think has been talked about hardly at all. So there was a time when you played 12 games, maybe the conference championship game, and then maybe a bowl game or something like that. So you played 12, 13, 14 games. There was a time when the regular season was 11 games. But now there's a potential of 12 regular season games, a conference championship game. If you don't get the first round bye, you're playing in that first round, the quarterfinal, the semifinal, and the finals. You could potentially play 17 college football games, equivalent to an NFL regular season, which was never fathomable for a college football player before. The extra wear and tear. And we're not just talking about playing any other team. We're talking about the best teams in the country for these more playoff games. How's that going to impact players' bodies, and how do they try to stay healthy?
Well, it goes back to your lead-in question. What are these athletes doing pre and post workout to protect themselves? And their recovery is so important, and that's what everyone's going to have to do. The biggest factor there is the exposure to events. Just like Dylan sustained. He had an injury. Those injuries occur during live football drills and practice and games. You're increasing the exposure by, sometimes 25, 30%. So the incidence of injury is therefore going to accelerate proportionally. So these guys are just going to have to stay diligent with their recovery programs. They're going to be aggressive. They're all going to get injured, just like Dylan was injured. They're all going to have to go through recovery programs. You're going to see people miss maybe a game during the playoffs, just like they do during the regular season. And they're just going to have to be diligent with everything they got them there in the first place. And they're just going to have to extend it in a month or two. It used to be in the student athlete's best interest not to have games during finals. Well, the almighty dollar has spoken, and we now know the real reason that we play more football games. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's always been about the money. It was just always hidden under this player safety and student athlete. None of that matters anymore. It's out on Front Street. All right, a couple of current Huskers I want to ask you about. So Gabe Ervin, running back, all right, has had two season-ending injuries in a row, been healthy this year, okay? But I'm curious, with a running back specifically, he had a hip injury and a torn ACL the year before. How does it affect a running back specifically when he's trying to come back and make cuts, be explosive? Everybody's trying to rip your head off. Like, what's that process probably like for someone like Gabe?
Well, Gabe had a couple of unique injuries. In the old days, we used to tell athletes 4 to 6 months, you'll be back on the field recover. We've seen, especially with a couple of professional athletes, and we've discussed this before, Adam, some of these guys are now taking a full year to recover from a single injury, let alone two different injuries. The kinetic chain involving the lower back, the hips, the knees, the ankles, they're all connected. So when you get an injury to one part of the body, you're going to increase the stress and the susceptibility to injuries of other parts of the body. And that's probably something that Gabe experienced. It takes a lot of dedication to recover from one of those injuries. It takes even more dedication to recover from both those injuries, because those are significantly, especially for someone as explosive as Gabe is.
All right, last question I got for you. Another Husker, Teddy Prohaska, and I don't have any updates on him. I'm rooting for him, obviously, but he's had 3 knee injuries, 3 season-ending injuries. I know there was a torn ACL in the left knee and a couple other season-ending injuries. For a guy like that trying to come back and play, if that's indeed what he tries to do, and I'm rooting for him, whatever he decides, how hard is that to try to come back from something like that and play football?
It's a unique problem. We've all cheering for Teddy. I've been watching him since he played high school. He's a great talent. He's gotten to that next level. And just like we talked about, with that next level is an increased exposure. There are guys now that are as big as he is, as strong as he is. So the fight is a little bit different for Teddy now. And sometimes genetically, I reconstructed ACLs on 4 kids in one family one time. And mom and dad looked at me and said, what did we do wrong? Well, you know what? You made good athletic kids. You exposed them to sports. They were good at it. And when you get them out on the field, things happen. But there is a genetic, predisposition for some of these injuries. Some of us are born a little bit more loose jointed, and that makes us a little more susceptible to shoulder injuries and knee injuries. And unfortunately, Teddy's experienced that. And then that could just be a fluke. You get in the wrong position at the wrong time, your shoulder, your knee, and something can fail. All these injuries that we see on the field, the collisions occur every play, yet we don't see someone laying down on the field every day. Or every play. So sometimes it's just bad luck. And again, active people are much more susceptible to injuries than people sitting on the couch.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we get out of here, I got my 3 questions for you. Let me know your answer in the comments below. Always check out CarrikerChronicles.com as well. Number 1, will Nebraska go 7-5? Number 2, will Nebraska finish with the top 15 recruiting class this year? And number 3, which bowl game do you think the Huskers will make? And do you even care? Yes or no? All right, Dr. Scott, you're a former Husker all-conference player. You want to throw the bones with me?
Let's do it, man.
All right, until next time, go big, red, and always remember, throw the bone.